Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special interview. I'm very excited today because I get to interview my favorite character from Star Trek Voyager. I should say my favorite actor from Star Trek Voyager, but also an all-around great guy, Robert Picardo. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and I'm not going to argue your good taste.
Well, okay, so this has been an unusual week for the Brony fandom, and it's been a very chaotic week, but it's also been a very resilient week in a sense because we all survived a convention in Las Vegas called Las Pegasus Unicon. Now, you weren't there.
Was it called Lost Pegasus or Lost Wages Unicon?
I think it was both, actually. Depends on who you ask, but it was definitely a train wreck of a convention. And I imagine, being that you've had multiple roles, not just in Star Trek, of course, but you've also been in Stargate, you've been on Home Improvement, you've been on many different shows, that you've been to your fair share of fan conventions, and you may have seen this sort of a train wreck before, perhaps.
I have indeed, Mike. I've been to a number of conventions, probably most of them being Star Trek specific, but I've also been to general science fiction conventions, to collectible conventions, to gaming conventions. And what I heard, first of all, Pat Arthur, who represents me and books me in my personal appearances, also represents John Delancey. So Pat was at the convention. I heard some of the details from Pat, and there are other agents there that are friends of mine as well. And my understanding was that the unscrupulous promoters had kind of, walked out without fulfilling their financial commitments toward the various talent that was there at the convention. A group of the agents got together and made a plan to try to make whole the actors for their losses by making an appeal directly to the Brony fans who are loyal, generous, and obviously anxious to keep their various actors happy so that they will continue to come to Brony conventions in the future. So I was told that there was this very unusual and generous effort made to make donations so that the money could be spread out among the various actors who hadn't been paid. And my representative, Pat Arthur, offered to help collect the funds so that they could be so that there would be sort of a central place where they could all be divided up and returned to the various people who were owed the money. She made the offer. Her PayPal account happens to be titled under the Robert Picardo fan club because I am the very first actor that Pat ever represented. Since then, she's become extremely popular, has a very full roster of people that she represents. So that is why the monies that were collected were put into a PayPal account that happened to have my name on it. Obviously, the money is completely designated and dedicated for the various talents at that particular convention who hadn't been paid. It was simply something that was brought to me. Would I be willing to help out in this way? And of course, I was totally on board with it because I've been in that position. I have been to conventions where promoters have not fulfilled their financial responsibilities to me, and it felt like the least that I could do to help out the actors who had been stiffed in this particular circumstance.
And I should clarify too for people who may not understand, your fan club account is a official business PayPal account, which allows for large transfers of money without being shut down. And I think that what a lot of people haven't understood is that when you're in that kind of a last minute, triage situation, you have to use the accounts available because if you use just a general PayPal account, those donations wouldn't have been able to come in. So it was incredibly generous of you to let the fandom and let.
You know what? I don't want to take credit for it. It's really generous of my representative, Pat Arthur, who is terrific at her job. She's very well liked in that community. She has a lot of friends among the other agents. She's a real get-along personality. So the genesis of this and the genius behind it is really hers. I cannot take credit for it. It's simply when I was informed and said, "How do you feel about this?" I said, "Absolutely, of course. If I can do anything, for the actors that are in the same situation that I've been in before, then I'm completely happy to do it."
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely even on that small level, it's still generous. I think the fandom would agree. I almost imagine, and this is somewhat shameless on my part, but I almost imagine that when Pat gave you a call, maybe a little bit of the doctor came out and had.
Yes, of course. Pat called and I said, please state the nature of the financial emergency. She told me who'd been stiffed, how they'd been stiffed, and how we could help. And of course, like any emergency medical PayPal account, I was very helpful and happy to be helpful.
Well, before I wrap this up really quickly, I know a lot of the fans out there are going to be wondering, you haven't seen much of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, but would you, given this whole debacle, or I should say, given this whole situation and your unexpected involvement with the fandom here, would you be willing to give it a shot?
Absolutely, I would. I would love. I think the first step for me, I'd like to be as fortunate as my colleague John Delancey. My guess is there is someone very high up in the My Little Pony production. There's a producer, an executive up top who happens to be a Star Trek fan, and if he recognizes the value of having Q, the most powerful man in the universe, then certainly he would recognize the value of having his equally arch counterpart, the Doctor's voice, on the show as well. So my dream is that I will make a voice appearance on the show at some point, and then I will be able to have a place at future Brony conventions. So that's my goal. I'm making that pledge to you now. I'm going to seek out that Star Trek fan. I am going to make a pitch for my services. If John Delancey can be the voice of chaos, then perhaps I can be the voice of order or good or who knows, medical sensibility, anything that involves my commanding and judicious presence.
Well, so what you're saying then is, if invited, you might consider going to a Brony convention?
I'm saying that if invited, I might, and I will do my homework because, to be honest with you, Bronies, I didn't know much about Star Trek when I became involved with that franchise, and now I consider myself quite the expert. So the same thing could happen again. History could repeat itself, and I could be the most informed Brony somewhere down the line of all of you.
Well, on behalf of myself and the entire crew at Everfree Network, I can say that we would all welcome you with open arms. It would be, I think it would go over very well.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mike, for helping me explain this. Because if I were a Brony and I'd heard that all this money I'd collected for various actors had gone into the account of an actor who had nothing to do at that moment in time with My Little Pony, I would be concerned. So I hope this has been clarifying, and I hope all of the money in the next few days finds its way to the proper actors. And as I said, I'm glad to have had some small part in helping rectify this situation.
Yeah, it's definitely already started to do that, and yeah, it's starting to look better. The sun is coming out, right? It's definitely getting better. So,
well, speaking of the sun coming out, I am in Waikiki Beach. I've just finished working on Hawaii Five-0. I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to go get a little sun and relax before I head back to LA.
I'm entirely jealous of you, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. I hope. Well, I don't mean to sound what's the word, self-satisfied, but I hope there are a few bronies out there that wish they were at Waikiki right now.
There might be some bronies at Waikiki right now. We better watch out. So, all right. Thank you so
Thanks
much again.
Thank you for helping me set the record straight, and I look forward to meeting those of you that are out there listening. I look forward to meeting you sometime in the future.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. Robert Picardo.
Computer, deactivate emergency BronyCom assisting hologram now.